Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today, we're going to be going over some of the fastest compact cars in GTA Online in terms of lap time. This is not to do with top speed. This is only to do with how fast these cars are going to go around a track. Now, there's a lot of real beauties on this list, so prepare your eyes. There's some really just great looking cars coming up very soon. Anyway guys, let's get into it. We're gonna start off with number 10. Alright guys, starting off with number 10, we of course have the Maxwell Asbo. Yes, what a beastly looking car. I mean, it's amazing. The Maxwell Asbo has a ton of customization that can be done to it, which is, I guess, an okay feature. It is the 10th fastest vehicle within the compacts category. It used to be a little bit higher, but as more better cars have been added into the game, the Asbo has gotten a little bit worse and a little bit worse. Now, the Maxwell Asbo gets an absolute ton of wheel spin off the line, and it is, of course, front wheel drive, so it doesn't exactly turn very well. However, it is kind of a fun car to drive, I've got to say. It's not my least favorite car ever. And the customization that you can do to it definitely makes the car a little bit more tolerable. At least, you know, you can look at something that's, well, as good looking as this is. Anyway guys, that's it for the Maxwell Asbo. At number 10, let's move into number 9. Alright guys, next up at number 9, we have the Baloka Prairie. Now the Baloka Prairie is a pretty good car in GTA. This is a car that you can get directly off of the street for absolutely free. It's definitely a car that I would recommend to get for free as well. You can buy it, but I'd just say pick it up for free off of the street. It's gonna be a little bit better for you. Now the Prairie actually has some pretty good customization you can do to it as well. Now I personally like the Prairie's performance a little bit better than the Asbo's. To me, this car handles a little bit better. It's definitely a little quicker in a straight line, but it does have its problems. It is front wheel drive, of course, so the back end kind of does like to slide out occasionally, like you guys just saw on that corner right there. And it tends to understeer similar to, well, every other front wheel drive car in the game, really. Overall though, the Prairie is a pretty decent vehicle, especially for being free off of the street. You can't really go wrong with this thing, and it's got a lot of customization you can do, so what's not to like? Anyway guys, that's it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Alright guys, next up we have the weenie Issey, and this is another car that you can get off of the street for free, and the performance of this thing will honestly surprise you. It is pretty good. Now you can also pick this car up for $18,000 if you choose to, however I would steal it off of the street as well. Save yourself a little bit of money and put it towards upgrading it. Now the Issey is actually a very good compact car, I gotta say. I remember when the game first came out, the Issey was like low-key. I feel like it was the best compact car in the game, but as we've got more and more DLCs within the game, of course it's gotten a little bit worse over time, but that's not to say it's a bad vehicle. I personally think the Issey is one of the best handling compact cars in the entire game. I like the performance of this thing a lot. It feels really good to drive. It feels solid, and it definitely handles really well. Like I don't know how to describe the handling, but the opposite of like McDonald's trays under the tires, that's this thing, man. It handles really nicely, and even if you do mess up, you can get this thing back super quick because it's really short wheelbase and it's really light, so the vehicle just kind of flies around when you know, kind of when you don't want it to occasionally, but of course if it does fly out, you can get it back in pretty darn quick. Now my one complaint with the Issey is it has like pretty much zero customization, which is a real shame, but it is still a pretty good car, and considering it's only $18,000, I mean, you can't really go wrong with this. You're definitely not going to win any races in the compact category, but the Issey is a pretty good car to start out with if you don't have one already. Alright guys, next up at number 6, we have the Dinka Ballista. Now the Dinka Ballista it's a classic car, man. This thing has been out in the game since day one. Love the Ballista. I remember I was hunting these things down to try to get one into my garage for a very long time in GTA, and I finally got one, and I was super happy about it. Now the Ballista kind of has the whole package together here, guys. I'm not gonna lie. It's not the fastest car ever, but everything else about this vehicle is super awesome. It has some good customization options. The exhaust sound is really good. It's quick enough, it handles nicely. Obviously, it's a compact car, it's pretty small. You can fit it into into a lot of places that you probably couldn't fit many other cars. Overall, I am a super huge fan of the Blista. I think this is an awesome car. Definitely one that I would recommend picking up, and of course it is the 6th fastest compact around a track in GTA. It's got some get up and go. It can go pretty quick. Now you're probably not going to win any races with this thing, but it is still a pretty cool car to have in your garage, I feel like. Would definitely recommend picking one of these up. Such a nice little car. Such a fun little car as well. Alright guys, next up at number 6 we have the BF Weevil. Now this is actually a car that I don't really recommend picking up unless you really like Volkswagen Beetles. I personally don't really love the handling on this vehicle, however, it is a pretty cool car to customize, I have to say. There is a lot of stuff that you can do to this vehicle. However, the performance of it, in my opinion, is not exactly the best. Now the one good thing that the Weevil does have going for it is it does handle pretty well, and it also is rear wheel drive, which is pretty rare in the compacts category. But of course this thing is in 6th place, so you're probably still not going to win any races with it. But as far as compact vehicles go, it is kind of cool. However, it's not exactly cool enough to justify the price of it and the performance of it. Now the Weevil costs around $870,000 without the trade price, which is pretty darn steep considering this thing is in 6th place, not very quick. Not gonna win you any races really. Now it does have cool customization like I mentioned, but if you're not really into the Volkswagen Beetle, I would say just kind of stay away from the BF Weevil, man. It's not really that great. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for number 6. Let's move on to number 5. Alright guys, next up at number 5 we of course have the Benefactor Panto. Now the Panto is, well, it's a hilarious car in GTA. Everyone loves the Panto. And the Panto is actually, as it okay, I lost the door. Alright, bet. The Panto, as it turns out, is also a very good vehicle. Now this thing does have a lot of customization you can do to it, and one of those options is of course the spoiler, like you guys can see on the roof of this thing right now. Now that upgrade really helps with the Panto, I have noticed. Driving the Panto without the spoiler versus with the spoiler, you're driving two separate cars. Now with the spoiler, the Panto is absolutely incredible. Without the spoiler, it's a pretty average vehicle. However, the Panto is very good. It's a very light car. It's obviously smaller than any other car that we've had on this list so far, and it's smaller than any other car that we will have on this list. It's the Panto. It's, you know, it's based off of a smart car, not exactly a very large vehicle. Now, the Panto is still quite a bit slower than some of the top cars within the compacts category. However, the Panto is also very cheap, coming in at about $95,000, which you can't really go wrong, boys. The Panto is kind of a steal. For being the 5th fastest car in this category, $95,000 is not a bad price. You will have a lot of fun with the Panto as well. Even in free mode, this car is kind of a blast to drive. I've been enjoying my time driving the Panto while recording this video, so I would definitely say to go out and get a Panto if you have some garage space left over. However, if you are planning to win races, you are probably going to want to look beyond the Panto. You're probably going to have to spend some more money. With that being said though, we do have another pretty good deal coming up at number 4, so let's get into it. Alright guys, next up at number 4 we have the Classy Rhapsody. Now the Rhapsody is actually a very good car, and it's a very reasonable price as well. Now the Rhapsody comes in at $140,000, so it's not that much more expensive than the Panto, and it's a little bit better. Honestly, it's quite a bit better. Now the Rhapsody is one of very few cars within the Compacts DLC that is rear wheel drive, which is honestly a pretty big benefit in my opinion. I personally like a rear wheel drive car much better than a front wheel drive car, so I like the Rhapsody a lot. However, the Rhapsody is still not going to be the fastest car in the category just based on the fact that it's rear wheel drive. It is of course 4th. Now the Rhapsody does handle pretty decently. It's got pretty good straight line performance as well. The handling is not the worst I've ever seen, but it's also not the best. However, it could be a lot worse. Now, I think that if the Rhapsody did have a little bit better handling, it would probably be a little bit closer to the top of the category. It's got handling that's less than ideal, maybe we'll say. Not the worst ever, but less than ideal for sure. Overall, the Rhapsody for $140,000 is not a bad vehicle. I would say to go ahead and pick one of these things up, especially if you're interested in old American cars. It is a pretty cool one to have. Anyway guys, that is it for number 4. Let's move on to the 3rd fastest car in the compacts category. Alright guys, next up we have the Dinka Bliss Decanjo at number 3. Now the Bliss Decanjo is a very awesome car to customize within GTA. This vehicle has so many options on it, it's really impressive, I gotta say. One of my favorite options is of course having the turbo sticking out of the hood. I think that's a really cool option. Anyways, beyond that, the Bliss Decanjo is one of the fastest vehicles in the compacts category, obviously coming in at number 3. It's gonna be up there. Now, the two cars ahead of this thing are quite a bit faster. I hate to say it, but they just are. However, the Bliss Decanjo is still a great vehicle for free mode, and you might be able to win some races with this thing if nobody is using the two cars that are ahead of it. So with all that being said, the Bliss Decanjo does have pretty darn good handling. The back end of this car I have noticed likes to drift out a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. It is pretty easy to get it back in and under control. As far as acceleration and speed go, the Canjo accelerates decently enough. It could be better, it could be a lot worse though. And the top speed of this vehicle is not the best either, but it is still pretty darn good. Especially for being in the compacts category, of course. Now it does have a spoiler option which you can equip it with, which I have done to it, which definitely will help to get you some more traction. And the other key component of this car is having the suspension absolutely maxed out. If you don't have the suspension maxed out, you will not get a very good lap time. Cars in GTA, even some of the other cars on this list, require their suspension to be absolutely bottomed out in order to get a pretty good lap time. It brings the center of gravity of the car closer to the ground, which allows the car to handle a little bit better, go faster through the corners, that sort of thing. So with this car, it is completely essential to bottom out the suspension. That is something you will have to do with this car. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Bliss Decanjo. I would recommend this thing for anyone who likes to customize cars, and it's really not that expensive, so definitely pick one of these things up if you don't have one already. With that being said, let's move on to number 2. Alright guys, next up we have the Grotti Brioso RA. Now the Brioso used to be very dominant in compact category races in GTA, and to this day it is still of course the second fastest car within the category. Now in comparison to all of the other cars that we've previously gone over on this list, this thing absolutely shreds every single one of them. The Brioso costs $155,000, and for that price you get an absolute rocket of a compact vehicle. Now my one complaint with the Brioso is that the handling on this car is quite unpredictable at times. It does not always handle very well. It does also have some pretty decent suspension travel, which is not necessarily a bad thing because taking it off-road is a little bit easier than some of the other cars we've gone over. If the suspension was able to be lowered a little bit better, I think that this car could potentially get a much better lap time. However, regardless of that, the Brioso is still the second fastest car within the category, so it's doing pretty good on its own. The acceleration, top speed, and the handling on this vehicle are all decent. The handling is probably its worst feature, I gotta say. The acceleration is very nice. Top speed is pretty decent as well, but the handling is kind of where this thing struggles. If you hit a curb with this vehicle, your life is over. I'm sorry, just plan the funeral now. But other than that, the Brioso is a pretty solid vehicle, and if you're using this thing in a race where nobody's using the car at number 1, you will more than likely end up winning. The Brioso is that good. Anyway guys, that is it for number 2. Let's move on to the fastest compact vehicle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. Alright guys, at number 1 we of course have the BF Club. Now if you don't know anything about the BF Club, it is leaps better than the car at number 2, which of course was the Brioso RA. The BF Club has pretty incredible performance as far as anything goes in GTA. This vehicle is actually as fast, if not faster, than more than half of the sports category within the game, which is pretty insane considering that this is in the compacts category. Now, the BF Club also has a very good time when you are off-roading with it. For some reason, this thing has a handling flag that gives it a much better response to off-road conditions than most of the other vehicles in this category, and most vehicles in the game really. So if you have a compacts race where you have to take a vehicle off-road, the BF Club is going to be really good for that. On top of that, it is much faster than any of the other vehicles below the Brioso. Now the Club does come at a pretty hefty cost to win compact races. This thing comes in at $1,280,000, which is very, very steep. However, you do get the best car in the compacts category for that price, which I guess makes the vehicle pretty worth it. At least until they add in a new vehicle that's even faster than this thing, but I honestly kind of doubt that they ever would. I don't know for sure, but what I do know right now is that if you want to win compacts races and you want to give yourself the best chance of doing it, the BF Club is the car that you need. Consistently, this vehicle will win you races. I've won many, many races within my BF Club in GTA. There's tons of customization you can do to it. It's a really fun car for free mode as well as racing. There's really nothing wrong with the BF Club. It is a great car. I highly recommend picking it up if you have a spare 1.3 mil lying around. Plus upgrades, you're looking at more like 1.5 mil. So do with that information what you will, but if you want to win compact category races, you are probably going to need a BF Club, because the guys that are winning compact races right now probably all do have BF Clubs. Anyway guys, there you have it. Those are the fastest compact vehicles within Grand Theft Auto Online in terms of racing around a track. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you learned something, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.